Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to Just Parlays. I'm Jim Williams, and beside me, the one, the only Chris King. Chris, interesting night last night. Some fun stuff that happened, some crazy stuff that happened. So, in short, it was a typical night in sports.
Yeah, I was disappointed with the way Gonzaga played for a long stretch of that game last night against Pepperdine. I thought they were going to blow them out of the gym, and all of a sudden they kept turning the ball over, and next thing you know, it was an 8-point game midway through the second half. And I was like, I put out on Twitter, I said, when is Gonzaga going to turn around and blow this team out? They won by 20, but they should have won by about 50.
You know, sometimes when yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes you get a team that's so much better than the other team that they just get bored. And they kind of play that way. And, there's no enthusiasm. They're like, oh, we can beat these guys. And they keep looking at the scoreboard and they're like, okay, fine. It doesn't matter if we're up by 7 or 70, It matters to us, but it doesn't necessarily matter to them. And as you say, they got out of there. A team like Gonzaga, though, at this point, I don't think they need style points. I mean, I think that's where they look at it and they're like, okay. And as the coach, I imagine, and I've seen this happen with Calipari and we talk about Rick Pitino all the time, guys like that, who whenever they get in the locker room, you would swear to God, that they lost the game by 20 points because they'll rip the players to shreds for, we took a team that, a Pepperdine team that we should have beaten by 40 points and we hung around. If you do that against a good team, then we may not hang around. We may end up losing it. So from that standpoint, that's kind of where they go, right? It's more along the lines.
Gonzaga shot 51.5% and they won the rebounding battle 50-24. I mean, when you look at those numbers and see Pepperdine shot 37%, you would think that the game was going to be a complete beat down. But like I said, it was an 8-point because Gonzaga kept turning it over. 14 turnovers wasn't going to get it done. And like you said, if you do that against a good team, you're going to be, looking at a loss. And if it's a tournament, you're going to be out.
Well, I mean, let's say you're playing a team that's even a little bit, let's say you're playing a team that's not as good as you are, but isn't that bad, isn't Pepperdine bad, okay? You can play, and we've seen it happen, like you say, in tournaments. We've seen it happen in conference tournaments. We've seen it happen in the NCAA tournament, where you go out and you just you kind of sleepwalk through the game, and you end up looking up at the scoreboard and go, "Wait a minute, we lost to those guys? Well, you lost to them because you let them hang around."
If you play like that against St. Mary's or somebody like that in the WCC tournament,
right,
you're going to have a lot different result than walking out with a 20-point win.
Right. And, over the years, not to say anything, I have great respect for Gonzaga, but over the years, that's been a Gonzaga problem, is that they go to the tournament and all of a sudden, the second half, for some reason, they don't show up and they end up out of the tournament and everybody's like, well, how did a team like Gonzaga lose? Well, they lost because they let other teams that weren't as good as they are hang around, and then, they're on their way back to, to Washington.
Well, if you're Gonzaga and you're Mark Few, do you contemplate trying to lobby to leave the West Coast Conference and go somewhere else so maybe you play in a bigger conference, or do you stay there, especially now with BYU leaving?
If I'm Mark Few, the Mountain West is probably not going to take me because I don't have a football team. And so where else do I go? I mean, the Pac-12 is not going to take me. So I think they're where they are, and that's where they are. I think what he does by playing a very strong non-conference schedule, which I think Gonzaga, over the years have had probably one of the, if not, one of the top 3 or 4 strongest non-conference schedules prior to the beginning of conference play of any team in the country. And I respect, Mark, for playing those kind of games. I think I stay in the WCC, but I focus on getting my team ready for the tournament. First, this WCC tournament, and then, of course, the NCAA tournament. But it's a balance that's tough to do. And now with conference realignment being the way it is, and like you said, BYU is going to be bouncing out of the out of the conference and heading to the Big 12. It will be interesting to see if they add another team, and if they do, who that other team will be. But
right, I mean, who could they conceivably get?
I'm sorry.
I mean, who could they conceivably get and add to the conference if to replace BYU?
Well, it would have to be a basketball. It would have to likely be a basketball only school, although it doesn't necessarily have to be. But pretty much everybody else in the conference is really more basketball only schools. It's kind of like the same thing that happened in the Big East, right? When they split off and went, they started adding teams that didn't make any sense to be in the East because they weren't even close to the East. But, conference realignment, be damned, it doesn't matter anymore, where you are, as long as they feel that you're going to be of value. I can't think of any real, who's out there that you would want to put in the WCC that's, that's going to add value.
Who are you going to get? New Mexico State from the WAC or something like that?
Well, I mean, you could. I might look to somebody in the Big Sky, maybe. Maybe that would make some sense.
Weber State or something like that would be a good fit, probably.
But at the end of the day, Gonzaga drives the television needle and the TV money. So who am I going to add that's going to add a market that's going to add me some additional TV money? And right now, I don't see that there's many. But does a Weber State add competitiveness? Yes. Does a Weber State add any money to my TV contract? I seriously doubt it. No. So I don't know. But you know what?
You're right. No, you're right. I mean, it would add to the competition level, but it's not going to put, as Tony Schiavone used to say, it's not going to put butts in the seats.
Right.
And it's not going to drive the bottom line.
Well, I mean, even if you put butts in the seats, that's nice. But does it put, viewers, in front of their television sets? And right now, the WCC has its own TV streaming service. Plus, it has a deal with CBS Sports Network. And it doesn't pay them a whole lot of money, but at this point in time, their goal is to get at least two teams into the conference tournament. I mean, into the NCAA tournament. That's where they make their money, and that's where the WCC lives. They live off of the money that they can make if they can get two teams into the NCAA tournament, because at that point, then they can pretty much make the budget for the rest of the conference at that point. So
right now they've got three teams with at least 20 wins in Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and San Francisco. BYU has 19, and Santa Clara has 17. So I mean, you've got potential there, but are the committee going to look at those teams, or are they going to just go, well, we'll take the 12th best team from the SEC, we'll put in Vanderbilt, who is a 500 team, give or take, and leave these guys out?
Well, they could. I think one of the things that's an advantage to them this year is that the ACC's down, and so that might be of some some advantage to them. And I think it really depends on what the tournament looks like, right? I'm talking about the conference tournament. If, say, a St. Mary's and a Gonzaga finish well above the 20 win mark, but let's say San Francisco sneaks in there and wins the tournament, then it's a little tougher to keep out a St. Mary's, for instance, because Gonzaga's in the tournament. That's forget that their ticket has been booked on that deal. So right now, if somebody sneaks in, and so you've got two teams that are quality, you might be able to get three teams in that bid. But that will come at the expense of somebody else, another mid-major conference. So if
true, to the point unknown about Utah last night, Utah disappointed me down the stretch in that game. Royce O'Neal got very complacent on a couple of possessions, throwing lazy passes. I talked about this with Rachel last night, and the fact that Royce O'Neal is eating big minutes right now. It just shows that Utah needs another floor spacer. This is where Joe Ingles getting hurt really hurt the Jazz going forward. And they didn't play to their strengths in the fourth quarter of that game. I mean, they were up 12 with 6 minutes to go and let it slip away. Donovan Mitchell really wasn't involved down the stretch, which didn't make sense to me at all. I mean, he had 33 points or something in the first three quarters, and they barely gave him the ball in the fourth, which didn't make sense at all. But
well, I'll
they've
tell
got
you
time
what.
to figure it out. Break.
No, go ahead.
I
was just going to say.
Figure it out.
There you go. All right. Well, I'll tell you what does make sense. And that is that BetMGM has a cool deal for all the basketball fans. Okay. And, we love BetMGM here. And here's the deal. All right. Use your BetMGM app, then place a bet of at least $10 on any NBA game and get $200 if either team hits a three-pointer. How about that? Okay. So it's really simple. Like we said before, you go to MGM, BetMGM, download the app. If you don't already have it, you should have it because we have it on our phones. Use your BetMGM app, place the bet of at least $10 and on any NBA game. And if one of the teams hits a three-pointer, you get $200. Now, if they don't hit a three-pointer, please tell us because that may be a record since they initiated the three-point play. So hopefully we'll see a three-pointer. But remember that you must be 21 years of older to play, and be sure always to wager responsibly. And that's from our friends at BetMGM. And because it's Thursday, it must be mid-major day in Kentucky because there they are, the Murray State Racers and the Austin Peay Governors.
As you see, the money line is prohibitive in favor of Murray State here, which is why I probably wouldn't play it. But hey, Gonzaga was going off at minus 5,000 on the money line last night. So,
well, just for those who might be new to to gambling, and we do have some new folks there, Chris. Explain what the minus 2,000 means.
It means if you were to bet $2,000 on, for some ungodly reason where you had that much money burning a hole in your pocket, and you bet it on Murray State to win, you'd win $100.
So you'd get back $2,100 on your $2,000 investment.
Correct.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the point spread goes off at minus 110, so you'd be in a lot better shape. Should Murray State cover the line, which I think they will. I mean, they beat Austin Peay. It was a closer game than most expected last month at Austin Peay. It was a 12-point game. But this one's at home, and let's face it, Murray State is 13-0 at home. They're 14-0 in the conference. Meanwhile, Austin Peay is 4-10 on the road. They're 6-8 in the Ohio Valley. We talked about the other day when you saw Austin Peay on our board being favored. It would probably be the only time you ever saw them on there in that situation, and they didn't really play all that well in that game against Eastern Illinois. They were up close to 20 in the first half and ended up winning by less than that with a disappointing second half showing. Murray State is 19th in the nation in scoring offense at 80 points a game. It seems like it doesn't matter if Ja Morant left a couple years ago or not. They just keep running right along. They're 23rd in field goal percentage. They're 28th in two-point shooting. They knock down more than 8 threes a game. They're 126th in three-point shooting, and they're very good on the offensive or on the glass. They're 28th in rebounding, which comes in handy because if you look at the next line, Austin Peay is 311th in scoring offense. They don't shoot the ball well. They shoot less than 50% from two. They shoot less than 32 or just over 32% from three, and they're 300th in the country in rebounding. And just in case you didn't know if Murray State was just an offensive team, they're not. They play defense too. They're 26th in scoring defense, 63rd in field goal percentage defense at 41%, and they only give up 31.4 rebounds a game, giving them a plus 7.8 board per game average. Murray State 4-1-1 against the spread in their last 6 at home against teams with a losing road record. They're 25-9-1 against the spread in their last 35 at home. Austin Peay 2-5-1 against the spread in their last 8 on the road against teams with a winning home record. You just can't have a ton of faith in Austin Peay tonight. Like I said, the fact that they had their struggles putting away the doormat that is Eastern Illinois the other night, they won that game by 8. their 3-game win streak comes to an end here.
Well, Chris, a lot of people always ask me, well, how does Murray State, year in and year out, put together a competitive team? And frankly, it's not as difficult as you might think it to be. And that's not to take away from the coaching staff at Murray State. But if you're in the state of Kentucky and you've got Indiana in that area right around you, right? They recruit a lot of kids who academically are not going to get into Kentucky or not going to get into Louisville, okay? Or Indiana or, Purdue or some of those other schools. They also do very well in the junior colleges. They bring kids in from junior college as well. So their theory of the case at Murray State has been, we can get 5 kids who can play very good basketball year in and year out just in the state of Kentucky, whether we get them from junior college or whether we get them from recruiting them. And they're going to play for us the whole time. And so rather than being a one and done at Kentucky with Calipari, or whether you are at Louisville and, playing the kind of the ball that they play there, it's the big, those are the 2 biggies in the state. But, you can't sleep on Murray State because year in and year out, they put together a very competitive basketball team. That doesn't mean they always make the tournament, but it does mean they're always competitive.
Right, and that's something to get, and it's just the fact that they play in a smaller conference like the Ohio Valley that people don't necessarily talk about them unless they up in somebody in the tournament like we saw with when Morant was there and everything else.
Absolutely,
and, so get overlooked.
Absolutely. All right, from Murray State and Austin Peay, we move on to
a couple teams we don't necessarily talk about out in the Big Sky. You got Northern Colorado. They're a 7-point favorite tonight over Idaho State. I know most of you guys probably don't watch Northern Colorado. They're in Greeley. But, they're a very entertaining team. Steve Smiley's got a real high-scoring, powered offense there. The Bears 14-11, 9-4 in the Big Sky. They're 6-7 on the road. Idaho State 5-18 in the conference. Or overall, 3-11 in the conference. They're 4-6 at home. Ryan Looney's team has had a tough year this year. For those of you that didn't see the game the other night, Northern Colorado played Southern Utah in one of the craziest games that I've seen probably this season. Jim and I were talking about it in the pre-show. Northern Colorado led by as many as 14 in the first half. They led by 11 at halftime. They watched Southern Utah storm back. The Thunderbirds were up 17 points with 5.5 minutes to go. They were up 15 points with 4:32 to go. And then the Bears started knocking down shots. They outscored Southern Utah 32-10 in the final 5:37 of that game to turn a 17-point deficit into a 5-point win. You have to watch out for the Bears because they will shoot from the outside and they will bury you out there. That's their trademark. Like we say here, they're 27th in scoring offense. They're 20th in field goal percentage. They're 17th in 2-point percentage, but they don't shoot a ton of twos. They're 9th in knocking down 10.6 threes a game. They are 13th in 3-point shooting. And look at that number, Jim. They take 27.5 threes a game. That's the 20th highest number in the nation. But when you're knocking down more than 10 and you're shooting 38% from out there, why not?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you got an Idaho State team that doesn't know how to score. They're 331st in the country at 63.6 points a game. They're 309th in field goal percentage. They're 319th in 3-point shooting. They're 301st in free throw shooting. And they're not all that great on the defensive end of the floor either, ranking 253rd in scoring offense, or defense, I should say. Northern Colorado 4-1 in their last 5, following a straight-up win. They're 24-7 in their last 31 as a road favorite. Idaho State 9-24-1 against the spread in their last 34 as a home underdog. After watching Northern Colorado bomb their way back into that game the other night, I mean, normally when you see a team down 17 with less than 6 to go, you think it's over. They had a win probability of 0.7% when they trailed 87-72 with 4:32 remaining in the game. So they scored 28 points in the last 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
To get in there, you have to think that Northern Colorado will bury people from the outside again. Dalen Kuntz, Matt Johnson, Drew Cuxhausen. Look for those guys to have another big night and carry the Bears to a win.
Danny has a question. No, Danny has a question for us, Chris.
Towson and Wilmington.
Towson and Wilmington.
That's going to be an interesting one. I mean, we talked about UNC Wilmington. They had been on a roll, but, all of a sudden we talked about how there's going to be some regression to the mean because their offensive numbers are so bad. They're coming off a couple more wins. They lost to Elon, which was a real surprise. Then they beat William & Mary. Then they lost to Hofstra, and they've coming off wins over Charleston and William & Mary again. But playing against Towson, when you shoot as poorly as we've seen UNC Wilmington shoot this year, and let's face it, they aren't that great when it comes to knocking down shots. They're coming currently ranked as of today 270th in field goal percentage at 42.3 points a game. You're putting a lot of pressure on your defense, which isn't that great either. They're 261st in field goal percentage defense. I like Towson. I mean, they played some good basketball, and they played some quality teams that we talked about earlier. They lost to Pitt, they lost to Monmouth, they lost to San Francisco, they fell to Ohio State. But they played all those teams tough. I mean, Ohio State beat them by 11 in Columbus. San Francisco beat them by 10 on a neutral floor. Once they kicked into conference play, they've gone 10-3. They're coming off a 36-point demolition of Elon the other night. I like Towson here, and I think Danny's on the mark there with going with the Tigers. Towson doesn't run, but Towson's very effective on the offensive end of the floor. And that's UNC Wilmington has to contend with. Wilmington won by 4 in overtime at home in the first meeting, or at Towson in the first meeting. I think Towson's out for revenge tonight.
They have a very nice gym there, and they have a very strong, a very vibrant student body. So Towson gets some pretty rowdy crowds there, and playing at Towson is not an easy thing to do under the best of circumstances. So interesting situation.
Bryce is asking about Stanford and Utah. Well, Stanford, Jared Haas has done a better job than I expected he was going to do this year. After Zaire Williams played 1 year and bolted, I wasn't really convinced that they were going to do a whole lot. Stanford's played well. I mean, they've swept USC. That's a feather in their cap.
Right.
They hung tough UCLA at home. They're coming off a win over Oregon State, so you can say everybody's beating Oregon State. But, we're also talking about a Stanford team. They beat Wyoming in the Diamond Head Classic in Hawaii back in December. Meanwhile, Utah is 9 on the road, and I don't expect them to make it 1-9 tonight. I'm going to take Stanford -4 over Utah. I've watched Utah play a bunch of times, and they don't look good. I don't get it.
They're inconsistent.
And that's on a good day.
Yeah, that's dangerous. All right. Let's sneak away from the college basketball scene. And if you've got hockey questions, now would be a good time to get them, because we're about to go to the ice, and we're about to go to a team that I'm somewhat familiar with, unfortunately, at times. The Capitals and the Flyers. These are two teams that I've seen over the years for sure.
Yeah, Washington bounced back the other night. They beat Nashville in that contest where I thought Nashville was actually going to get the win because I figured that they were playing at home. But, Washington 27-15-9. They're 15-5-4 on the road. They're facing a Philadelphia team that's awful. 15-24-9. They don't play well at home. They don't play well on the road. They don't play well, in practice. There's talk that they might trade Claude Giroux. There's not a whole lot you can say about the Flyers that is good at this point. It's supposed to be Ilya Samsonov, 16-7-3 at 283 goals against, a 906 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. And the good news for Washington is they get to face Martin Jones, who is absolutely sucky. He's 6-8-2 with a 356 goals against, a 901 save percentage. Jones has not won since December 29th when he beat the Kraken 3-2 in overtime. He's given up at least 3 goals in his last 5 starts. He's been pulled in 2 of them, including a game against the Sabres, where he gave up 4 goals in the first 18 minutes. That doesn't bode well when you're Philadelphia. They would have had a better chance with Carter Hart, but he's not playing tonight, barring, Jones getting the hook again. Washington is 11th in goals for at 3.22. They're 8th in goals against at 2.75. Philadelphia is 27th in goals for, just averaging 2.54 goals a night. They're 25th in goals against at 3.40. Washington is 4-0 in their last 4 on the road. Those numbers about the Flyers are absolutely horrifying when you look at them. They're 3-13 in their last 16 against Metropolitan Division teams. They are 4-24 in their last 28 games against the Eastern Conference. They are 0-7 in their last 7 on Thursday. And if it wasn't enough, the Capitals have won the last 4 meetings between these teams in Philadelphia. They've won 6 of the last 8 overall. You know, if you don't want to play the fact that Washington wins by multiple goals, which they should with Martin Jones in net, the money line is only 180, so it's not that bad. But I think that they'll win probably 4-2, 5-2. I just have no faith in the Flyers, especially with Jones between the pipes.
You know, it's funny. There used to be a day when nobody wanted to play Philadelphia in Philadelphia. And for reasons that I have not any capability of answering, the Flyers just don't play well at home. They don't play that much on the road either, but they have not had the kind of stuff that we are expected when we watch a Philadelphia Flyers team.
Yeah, I mean, they've had 2 double-digit losing streaks already this season.
Yeah, that's good enough to get them drummed out of Philadelphia. So let's move on from the Caps and the Flyers to our next matchup, which is Montreal and St. Louis. Now, you've been on St. Louis pretty much for the season.
Well, yeah, that's because I like to, and I'm also against anyone that's playing Montreal because they're horrible.
That's true too.
So this is a perfect storm when you get right down to it. The money or the puck line is -115. The money line is prohibitive because Montreal is so bad. The Blues are 28-14-5. They're 10-8-3 on the road. The Canadians are 8-33-7. That's not a typo. 8-33-7. Hard to believe this team was in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Ville Husso is 11-3-0. He leads the league with a 185 goals against, a 939 save percentage, and 2 shutouts because they take the net for the Blues. Against the Canadians, Samuel Montembeault. No, you won't see the Hamburglar tonight. That's right. Montreal signed Andrew Hammond, who hasn't played in the league in 3 or 4 years. Late last week, I believe he's the backup goaltender right now. Montembeault 2-10-4 with a 392 goals against and an 894 save percentage. He's 1-7-3 in his last 11 starts.
Ouch.
Those are some pretty putrid numbers. And you're facing a St. Louis team that's 5th in the league in goals per game at 3.51. They're 7th in goals against. Meanwhile, Montreal, dead last in goals per game, dead last in goals against, dead last in the standings. The Blues 5-1 in their last 6 after scoring 5 or more. The Canadians, Jim, that's not a typo. They're 9-44 in their last 53 games. That's along the lines of what Ottawa did as an expansion team back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And 4-22 in the last 26 against the Western Conference.
The one thing. No, I clearly like the Blues in this one. The one thing I have to say about Montembeault is that he's got the best name of any Montreal professional player since Jean Bocabella, the catcher for the Montreal Expos back in the day. So that's about all we can say good about Montreal and St. Louis. So I guess it's time to go from that game to the hardwood in the association.
Well, the funny part about all that is, you talk about Montreal Canadian names, and, it just reminds me of what Evan said about talking about Madden with Bernie Jeffrey on, because Bernie's nickname was Boom Boom. So,
right, yeah.
James, I know that people, I think that I don't know what happened with the Buffalo Eastern Michigan game on the website. It wasn't one that I was assigned to. I actually liked Buffalo in that game. I liked the way Buffalo played the other day against Bowling Green. We talked about it on the show Tuesday. Good to see UB pick up another win. They went 83-69. That game just went final over Eastern Michigan on the road. Yet, why they tipped off at 12 noon makes no sense. That game was supposed to originally be scheduled for, I think it was a 6 or 7 p.m. tip-off, and they moved it up. So, I mean, it's always entertaining to talk about a game while we're on the show, but I was going to pick UB and put it in as one of my favorite picks for the day. But of course, they moved the tip up, so the game was already in the second half by the time we came on.
Well, it's even better because now you can say that you pick them to win.
Well, yeah, but I mean, nobody can bet on it now. It's over.
Yeah.
But I mean, I looked at the game last night and I saw, how UB rolled over Bowling Green Tuesday night. It was a game we had on the board.
Right.
And, now that gives the Bulls 5 straight wins. They're now 15-8. They're 9-4 in the MAC. They're not going to catch Toledo or Akron in the Mid American, but
well, you never know what happens come tournament time.
That's true. I mean, so they've got that going for them. By the way, James, what happened to Sacramento?
We'll wait for that answer, James. By the way, in your honor, while we're teeing up for the Mavs and the Pelicans, smash that like button, as James would have you say, and subscribe. So please do that for us. Thank you, James. As you sort out the Sacramento situation, it's time to sort out the Mavs and the Pelicans.
Well, real quick, Ryan wants to know if his Sharks are going to bounce back tonight at the SAP Center against Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks. Jim, what do you make of that game?
Man, the Sharks have not been good at home, surprisingly so. What's the line?
The puck line has Vancouver going as a slim -115 favorite. San Jose's at -105.
Ooh, I don't. Bruce is my boy, so I'm gonna have to hang with him.
I'm just gonna check the goalie matchup. It's supposed to be Thatcher Demko again for Vancouver. He's coming off that career high 51 save performance and a 3-2 win over Toronto Saturday. Right. Reimer is expected to get the start for San Jose, which is probably a better bet than Zach Sawchenko. Aiden Hill, normally the other guy, but he's dealing with a lower body injury, so he's shut down. Won't be back for probably another week or so.
Who do you like, Chris?
It's going to be interesting. I think I went with the total on this game just because I wasn't totally sure when I wrote the game for Winners and Whiners. I went with Vancouver just because of the fact that because they played better in their own end. I mean, the Canucks are fifth in goals against. Sharks are 21st. Neither team scores a whole lot, so that's a wash.
Right.
But it's like you said, San Jose hasn't been all that great of late and playing at home, and they've lost, 8 of 10 coming into this one. So, and we've talked about how well Vancouver's played under Boudreau. So I leaned toward Vancouver, but it's going to be a close one.
Well, we hope for your sake, Ryan, because we know that you're a Sharks fan, that they can get back off the schneid tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game for sure.
It'll be interesting. So we have a new deal from BetMGM for NBA fans, and tonight, while you're watching the Mavericks and the Pelicans, that might be a good game to use that MGM app on. Hey, Chris, what do you think?
Right. I mean, the Mavs are playing quality basketball here. They're 34-24 overall. They're 14-13 on the road. New Orleans 23-35 on the season. They're 13-16 at home. One thing you have to take into consideration for New Orleans too is they're playing their third game in 4 nights. Where they beat Toronto Monday, then they lost to Memphis Tuesday, and now they have to play Dallas. Dallas coming in off that 107-99 road win over Miami Tuesday night. The Pelicans, they don't have any offense, which is strange when you look at some of the talent they've had. I mean, they traded away some guys to get McCollum, and I'm sure McCollum will help out offensively to some extent. But they're still 26th in scoring offense. They're 25th in field goal percentage. They are 27th in three-point shooting, and you've got to deal with a Dallas team that's second in the league in scoring defense. I mean, it's not just Luka Doncic scoring 50 points for the Mavs. They're actually playing defense, and that's something that wasn't really abundant when Rick Carlisle was coaching there.
Right.
I don't know if Jason Kidd's instilled defense into the Mavs all of a sudden or what, but Dallas 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 overall. New Orleans 2-6 in the last 8 following a straight up double-digit loss. They're 1-4 in their last 5 as a home underdog. Dallas has won covered in 4 of the last 5 meetings in New Orleans. I think they'll get the win here. New Orleans is going to run out of gas in the second half.
As
And
both teams head into the All-Star break.
Right.
So, all right. The Mavs and the Pelicans, and we wrap up our NBA tonight going over to.
Funny, we just talked about the Heat because we said Dallas beat them the other night. They're on the road now to face Charlotte. The Heat 37-21. They're 18-14 on the road. Charlotte is 29-30. I remember a few weeks ago, everybody was all high on Charlotte because they had won 6-7 in a row. Since then, they've dropped 8 of 9, and they've gone just 2-6-1 in that stretch against the spread. Charlotte leads the league in scoring offense, 113.9 points a game, but they're facing a Miami team that's 5th in the league in scoring defense and 5th in field goal percentage defense. Meanwhile, Charlotte does not play defense. They're allergic to it. They're 28th in scoring defense at 114.8 points a game. The 2 teams worse than them, Sacramento and Houston. Those are not teams you want to be coupled with when you're talking about stopping teams. They're 20th in field goal percentage defense. They are 22nd in 3-point defense. Let's face it, they don't. Charlotte won't have Gordon Hayward again. Jimmy Butler is probable, apparently, with his shoulder, so he'll play. Tyler Hero won't. But, Miami 5-0 in their last 5 is a road favorite. They're 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 on the road. Charlotte 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 on one-day arrest. And that last line is just completely galling. It reminds me of when we talked about Atlanta earlier this season. The Hornets are 0-8 against the spread at home in their last 8 games. I don't see them turning things around here. Miami's kind of run away and hid now with the Southeast Division. They're up 8.5 games in the standings.
Right.
And they're half a game behind Chicago for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. Charlotte goes down again tonight with another disappointing performance. You have to wonder, is James Borrego going to suddenly become the scapegoat for the issues that this team has had?
It's quite possible. And the funny thing is that Michael Jordan, who, of course, is the owner of this team or is the head of the ownership group, is in Daytona because that's where his NASCAR team makes its debut. And so the great one is in Daytona while the Hornets are likely to lose to Miami.
Is Bubba Wallace his driver?
Yeah, Bubba Wallace is driving his car. So
that's what I thought, but I wanted to double check.
Yep, Bubba Wallace is with MJ's team, and let's talk about 2 for the money.
All right. Let's do it. We just talked about the top one, Miami.
Well, that was easy.
I don't think we have to talk a whole lot more about that one. Right. At Murray State, we talked about the top of the show. I think we'll roll over Austin Peay. I mean, the Racers are very good at home. Let's face it. They're 2 losses this season when you look at who managed to knock Murray State off. Jim, any guess?
They were 2 good teams. I remember that much.
Well, one of them was good. The other one was East Tennessee State.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But Auburn on the road.
Yeah, they're a pretty decent team.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl, I feel bad because, they're playing so well, but it's not going to really make a difference with all the show cause issues and everything else that they've had. But
there's a Colorado State team that we haven't seen, that we've seen up on the board before. Good to see them back.
Yeah, New Mexico burned me the other day. They beat Wyoming straight up. I was surprised with that when they played very well defensively. My question is, to put it in baseball terminology, Johnny Vandermeer is the only person to throw back-to-back no-hitters.
Right.
I don't think New Mexico is going to do that and shut down Colorado State the way they shut down Wyoming.
Colorado State the Pit?
Yeah, it's at the Pit.
Okay.
But Colorado State plays fundamental basketball so well that I don't know if New Mexico can hang.
Well,
now I could be wrong. I mean, we saw what they did with Wyoming the other day, but I don't see Pitino's team doing that twice in a row.
No, they
and that's Richard Pitino. Just in case anybody wonders if Pitino left Iona all of a sudden.
Right. And flew down to New Mexico. Yeah. Colorado State has been consistent, and that's what you want this time of the year. And once again, we continue to see that teams in these mid-major conferences like the the Mountain are to be reckoned with.
Yeah,
So.
I mean that's the problem is everybody overlooks these teams because of the fact that they're not on TV every 5 minutes. It's not Duke, it's not
Right.
Kentucky, it's not Tennessee, it's not Baylor, it's not Texas Tech
Mm-hmm.
or Ohio State or Purdue or Michigan State.
Right.
These are teams that that you only catch on the ESPN 37, or if they ran out of other programming and they don't want to show cornhole, you'll see teams like Colorado State,
Right.
unless Fox Sports wanted showing them, but or
they're on
CBS
Stadium. Stadium has a lot of those games, as does CBS Sportsnet. But you have to go looking for them. But they're worth looking for. That's for sure. Speaking of 4, we went 2 for the money. Let's play 4 for the show.
Yeah, I'm back. I mean, there we go. Yeah, the Rangers.
The Rangers are back.
Yep, they're at home tonight against the Red Wings. Detroit has been very leaky of late. We saw them give up 7 goals the other night to Minnesota. The Rangers play very well at home. We saw them beat Boston in a shootout the other night, which benefited us because we told you that the Rangers would win. It's an original 6 battle, but Detroit, they've played well, and much to the chagrin of Detroit Lenny, we're not gonna back the Wings tonight. It's tough to go into Madison Square Garden with a young team. Detroit, sure, they're better than they've been in recent years, but that's not setting a very high threshold. That's like saying the Lions were better the year after they went 0-16 because they won a game or 2. The Rangers should prevail there. The Mavs, I like over the Pelicans. We talked about it. We talked about the Caps facing the Flyers. Martin Jones how he still has a job is beyond me. He's kind of like the Yaroslav Halak of the Eastern Conference, where he barely plays, and when he does, he sucks. Which always works for the other team, which is why we're fading Philadelphia. And Northern Colorado over Idaho State. Like I said, if you can score 28 points in 4.5 minutes and erase a 15-point deficit against a quality team, I think you can beat a team that's 5-18.
Pretty good shot of it, I would guess. All right, so now it's time to go to the menu. And this is where you've got really, you can put any 2 of these together and come away in good shape.
Yeah, 2 or 3 or 17, whatever.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, that's the fun of it, though, is, we don't have to put them together for you. We can just give you the options and you can build them how you want.
Right.
Montana State, they're going to go on the road to Cheney and face Eastern Washington. I like the Bobcats to come out with a win there. They're only favored by 2, so it's a small line to work with. Same thing with Kansas City, the Roos, Jim's favorite mascot. They go on the road to face
my Roos are playing.
Face the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. North Dakota's been awful this season. I think Kansas City can go up there to the Fargo Dome and come up with a win. Speaking of teams that have played well, how about North Texas? It's another team that nobody ever talks about because they play in Conference USA, and they don't get to play a lot of marquee games. I mean, they did face Kansas and Buffalo and Miami earlier this season. They beat Drake on a neutral floor. They beat UMass. They beat Wichita State, who's on the road, which Wichita State's a decent team in the AAC, and they're 11-1 in Conference USA. Grant McCaslin, he got North Texas into the tournament last year, where they knocked off Purdue in the first round.
Right.
Because anytime anybody picks Purdue in a big game, they find a way to lose. And they gave Villanova a run for a while before getting dusted in the second half of that one. But, they're 18-4. I think that they should be able to go on the road and beat Florida Atlantic. I know Dusty May's done a good job with the Owls. They're 13-3 at home this year, but I just like the Mean Green a little bit more than I like the Owls. North Texas,
they're playing down. They're playing down in Boca.
Correct.
Okay.
But North Texas plays. They're one of those teams that's kind of like a boa constrictor. They'll just squeeze the life out of you on the defensive end of the floor.
Yep.
And that's the way it goes there. Wagner, we've talked about them a couple times. They're facing Sacred Heart on the road. Wagner's played well in the Northeast Conference. Nobody ever talks about them either because people are like, well, I don't even know what the Northeast Conference is. I don't know where Wagner is. They're on Staten Island. I'm sure that, if you ever watching Practical Jokers.
Take a left from Rochelle's house, and they're down the street.
Yeah, as I say, if you ever watch Practical Jokers, I'm sure if you ask Murr, Sal, Q, and now that Joe Gatto's gone, if you ask them, they could probably point you right where it is. But yeah, they're facing Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart hasn't been great this year. They're 4-8 in the conference, or 8-17 overall. I like the Seahawks in that one. On the ice, Winnipeg over Seattle. The Jets beat Minnesota yesterday, which was surprising because I figured they were going to just go in the tank again. Seattle, we know their issues. We don't have to beat them into the ground. I like Edmonton, either with or without the puck line, whichever is easier for you guys, whatever you want to do. They get to face an Anaheim team playing the second game of a back-to-back. Anaheim dusted 6-2 last night by the Flames in a game where we said the Flames would win and cover the money line and go over the total, and all those things happened. It's going to be Anthony Stolarz in net for the Ducks tonight, not John Gibson. Also, Edmonton 3-0 under Jay Woodcroft, who took over for Dave Tippett after he was fired last week. Vancouver and San Jose, like I said, I think it's going to go over the total. The last meeting was a 5-2 or 5-3 win for Vancouver. Both these teams are desperate to pick up wins. They're both, I think, 6 or 7 points out of the last wild card spot in the Western Conference, so they need to pick up some victories. Look for a lot of open-ended rushes here, and that one pushes over the number. On the hardwood, I'm going to go with the Bucks -6 over Philadelphia. After seeing Philadelphia completely forget to play defense against Boston the other night, giving up 132 points, I shudder to think what they're going to do facing Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks at the Fiserv Forum. I like Milwaukee there. I'm just going to keep fading the Rockets. I don't care. I know it's a bit high on a money line if you don't want to lay the 10.5 points, which I get because it's the Clippers. Houston's playing the second game of a back-to-back. They played yesterday and lost by 3 to the Suns, but they blew a big lead. Phoenix rallied without Chris Paul, who was ejected. And Brooklyn, we told you yesterday to take them over the Nets or over the Knicks. I mean, they were down 20 in the first quarter and still came back to win outright. Never mind the points they were getting. They get to face the Wizards. Both teams playing the second game of back-to-back. Washington fell at Indiana yesterday, 113-108. Playing at home, I look for the Nets since they only had to go, from one borough to the other to come up with the victory at the Barclays Center to head into the break with a little bit of momentum. Jim disappeared. So if there's any questions out there, we'll feel free to throw them out there and we will answer them. I see, James, were you asking about UAB in South Alabama, or were you going with those two as a couple games you were looking at? I hadn't really looked to see what was going on with UAB tonight. I know they played some very quality basketball. Oh, UAB's playing Rice. That'll be an interesting one. Rice is not Rice isn't the pushover that they used to be when you get right down to it. For UAB being 14-1 at home. One thing you do have to look out for on the injury report, Rice will not have Quincy Olivari, who's done for the year with a wrist injury. He had averaged 9.9 points and 6 rebounds a game for the Owls. But he's done Josh LeBlanc, who's not really a factor as much for UAB, averages 4.6 points, 5 boards a night. He is out with a tricep injury tonight for UAB. But when you get right down to it, the Blazers, they play very well offensively, and they're good on the defensive end of the floor. Meanwhile, Rice struggles defensively, and that's a big issue for the Owls. Surprisingly, Rice handed UAB one of their conference losses, beating the Blazers 85-80 at home earlier this season. So it's a bit of a revenge game. Like we said, UAB plays very well on their home floor. They're coming off in their last couple of home games. They whipped Middle Tennessee by 22. They whipped Southern Miss by 21. They beat Florida Atlantic. They beat Florida International. They beat UTSA by 28. I think that UAB can probably cover the line. If it gets any higher than that, I'd be a little skittish of it. Towson and UNC Wilmington we talked about a little bit.
Right.
UNC Wilmington is due for regression. I know they beat Towson at Towson in the first meeting, but Towson's been playing better basketball than UNC Wilmington has of late. Beating William and Mary doesn't really impress me all that much because everybody beats William and Mary. It's kind of like, the bully beating up the little kid and taking his lunch money. That's basically what William and Mary is. They're the
lunch money. Yes.
Yeah, they're the free money machine of the CAA. Yeah. So I would look towards Towson in that one. What was the other one that we were talking about here? UAB, yeah, we just talked. UAB, I said I think I'll take down Rice. I just don't have faith that Rice can put together the same kind of performance they did before, especially losing Olivari. That's a big blow to them.
Yeah.
Akron, Akron is due to bounce back. I don't know how they lost to Western Michigan the other day. That's just a completely galling loss, and you have to think John Gross is going to be completely steamed about that one. They're facing a Northern Illinois team that is not very good. Despite being in the middle of the pack in tempo, Northern Illinois still doesn't score. Akron, they only won by 6 in the first meeting at Northern Illinois. I think they'll win by double figures tonight over the Huskies. Rashawn Burno has to find some scores on that team because he doesn't have any. Bruins and the Islanders. Last I checked, you're still not going to see Bergeron. I think Marchand is still serving his suspension. Boston struggles offensively without those guys. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to struggle when you're minus 2/3 of your top line. I mean, right. But the fact remains that, Boston still just is not – they're trying to rely on goaltending and defense, and that doesn't always work because you still have to score. See, Bergeron is marked as questionable. Marchand doesn't come back till next week. It's supposed to be Sorokin and net for the Islanders against Ullmark for the Bruins. I kind of like the Islanders are playing at home, and until I can see Boston actually put some pucks in the net, I mean, you look at the last 4 games, the Bruins have scored a total of 5 goals, and 2 of those were in the game where Bergeron got hurt, and then Marchand got suspended. So if you look in the last 3 games, without those 2 guys, Boston has scored 3 times. I know the Islanders lost to Buffalo the other day. That was a horrible game for the Islanders. But they should bounce back at home. If they want to have any chance of trying to make any kind of run, they need to start winning some games, and that starts tonight. If they don't, you might as well write them off.
Yep. We got a couple quick things before we get out of here. First of all, Scott and Scott coming up at 3 o'clock on Back to the Window, right here on the Winners and Whiners Sports Betting Network, so don't forget that. Tonight is the final night before the All-Star break in the NBA. So we've been talking about our Bet MGM NBA promotion. All the information on that is in the show box below. Be sure to check that out. If you are looking for some interesting things to watch on TV tonight or late this afternoon, Tiger Woods is back as a host in Los Angeles. 1 year ago is when he had that tragic accident. And, of course, he will be not playing, but he will be being the host at the beautiful Riviera Country Club in Los Angeles, where the Genesis Invitational will be played over the weekend and starts today. And then tonight on Fox, you've got FS1. You've got NASCAR with the Twin 250s. We'll find out who's going to be in the rest of the field for Sunday's Daytona 500. So besides the NBA, besides the NHL, besides good college basketball, we got some golf, and we got some NASCAR that is certainly worth your attention over this evening. Chris, anything that you'd like to chat about before we head out of here on a Thursday?
Well, I see Will asked about Middle Tennessee and Chattanooga. Chattanooga is going to face UNC Greensboro tonight at home. The Mocs have played very good basketball. Lamont Paris has done a great job. I look for them to beat Greensboro. Greensboro's not that great. Mm-hmm. People talk about how they're supposed to be a good team. And then Middle Tennessee is at Florida International. I get the Panthers have won 10 of their 13 games at home, but Middle Tennessee has played some quality basketball. They won 3 in a row coming into this one. I look for them to beat Florida International. I just don't trust the Panthers. They've lost 4 of their last 6, and one of the wins was a 1-point win over Marshall. Other than that, I think we've got pretty much everything locked down. I mean, don't forget tomorrow we'll talk about the Daytona 500 and some other stuff.
Yeah, we'll have some fun.
I'm sure Jim's got all kinds of good information to tell you here in a second.
Well, I pretty much used it all up, but I'll refresh for just a second. That is at 3:00. Scott and Scott back to the window. As I said before, Tiger Woods and a lot of good golf at the Riviera Country Club out in Los Angeles. And tonight, if you're a NASCAR fan, FS1 has the twin 250s, which should be a lot of fun to watch. So that's what we can do. We've already talked about some great NHL stuff, some good college hoops, and the last night before the NBA takes a much deserved and much anticipated All-Star break. So that's pretty much what we got for this afternoon. Don't forget tomorrow. Bring your pens and pencils and ask those questions again. We always love seeing your questions, and Chris does a great job of answering them for you. And by all means, hit that like button and subscribe, because we definitely want you as part of our family here. Also, if you can't quite catch us, don't worry. You can get our podcast. All that information is in the show box below. So pretty much that's what we got for you today, gang. Hope that you've had fun. We've had fun giving information to you. So till tomorrow, for the guy over there, Mr. King, I'm Jim Williams saying so long. We will see you tomorrow. Be well and be safe and enjoy.